The screams pierced through the bustling Yaba market in Lagos like a knife through silk. Adunny Okafor felt her husband Emeka's boot connect with her ribs as she fumbled for the scattered tomatoes on the dusty ground, her white cane sliding away from her grasp. "You embarrass me everywhere we go." Emeka's voice boomed above the shocked gasps of onlookers. "Can't you see where you're walking, you blind fool?" The irony of his words wasn't lost on the growing crowd of market vendors and shoppers who stopped their haggling to witness this public disgrace. Adunny, a beautiful woman of 32 with milk chocolate skin and elegant braids, had lost her sight in a car accident 3 years into their marriage. Now, after 8 years together, her husband's patience had apparently run out completely. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've ever been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. "Please, Emeka," Adunny whispered, her designer head wrap askew as she struggled to her feet. Despite her disability, she carried herself with dignity that her husband's cruelty couldn't diminish. "The children are watching." 5-year-old Kemi and 7-year-old Chidi stood frozen by their father's car, their school uniforms wrinkled from the morning rush. Kemi's thumb found its way to her mouth, a habit she developed since witnessing these increasingly frequent outbursts. "Then maybe they'll learn not to be useless like their mother." Emeka spat, his handsome features twisted with disgust. At 35, he was still the successful architect who'd swept Adunny off her feet at the University of Lagos. But success had bred arrogance, and arrogance had bred contempt. Mrs. Folake, an elderly pepper seller, stepped forward with fire in her eyes. "Oga, this is not right. She is your wife, not your slave." Emeka's laugh was cold as December harmattan winds. "Mind your business, Mama. Some of us have real responsibilities." He grabbed Adunny's arm roughly, his gold wedding band glinting in the afternoon sun. Unlike some people who just drain resources. As he dragged her toward their black SUV, Adunny's mind was calculating. The domestic betrayal she'd suspected for months suddenly crystallized into certainty. The late nights, the unexplained expenses, the way he flinched when she touched him. It all made sense now. His cruelty wasn't just about her blindness. It was about guilt. "Emeka," she said quietly as he shoved her into the passenger seat. "I know about Chioma." The name hung in the air like smoke from burning rubber. Emeka's hand froze on the car door, and for the first time in months, Adunny smiled. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping African stories. What do you think Adunny knows about Chioma? Comment your theories below. The silence in their Victoria Island home was deafening. Emeka paced the marble floors of their living room like a caged leopard, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the imported tiles. The modern African artwork on the walls, pieces Adunny had chosen back when her opinion still mattered, seemed to mock him with their vibrant colors and bold statements about resilience. "How long have you known?" His voice was barely controlled, the architect in him trying to calculate structural damage to his carefully built lies. Adunny sat perfectly still on their cream leather sofa, her fingers tracing the gold threading of her traditional Ankara blouse. "Long enough." She tilted her head toward the sound of their children's voices drifting from upstairs. "Does she know about us? About Kemi and Chidi?" The question hit its mark. Emeka stopped pacing. "Chioma thinks you're my secretary," he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "She thinks we're just friends helping each other through difficult times." Adunny's laugh was soft, almost musical, but it carried an edge that made Emeka's blood run cold. "Your secretary? How creative." She stood gracefully, her movements fluid despite her blindness. "Tell me, does she know this secretary bore you 2 children? Or that this secretary helped build your architectural firm with her family's money?" The reminder of her financial contribution stung. When Adunny's father, Chief Adebayo Bakare, had invested 200 million naira in Emeka's startup firm 5 years ago, it had been a wedding gift. The blind daughter of a textile mogul deserved security. The old man had reasoned. Now that investment had grown into Okafor and Associates, one of Lagos's most prestigious architectural firms. "Adunny, please." Emeka's voice cracked slightly. "It's not what you think." "What I think." She moved toward him with the confidence of someone who'd memorized every inch of her domain. I think you've been spending our children's school fees on jewelry for your girlfriend. I think you've been using my father's money to rent her that apartment in Lekki. And I think... She paused inches from his face, her sightless eyes somehow seeing straight through him. I think you forgot that blind doesn't mean stupid. Emeka's phone buzzed. A text from Chioma. Baby? Where are you? I'm wearing the lingerie you bought me. Adunny's smile widened as she heard the telltale sound. Is that her now? Tell Chioma I said hello. The ice in her voice made Emeka realize he'd underestimated his wife completely. The woman he'd been treating as a burden was about to become his biggest threat. What's Adunny planning? Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next in this tale of infidelity in marriage. The law office of Barrister Adebola Ogundipe was a testament to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos Island, awards covering mahogany-paneled walls, and the kind of quiet confidence that came with never losing a case that mattered. Adunny sat across from the sharp-featured lawyer, her white cane resting against her chair, but her posture radiating determination. 8 years of marriage, 2 children, and substantial financial contributions to his business. Barrister Ogundipe summarized, her voice crisp as she reviewed the documents Adunny had somehow gathered. Your husband has been remarkably careless with his paper trail. Adunny smiled. Emeka always underestimated what I could access. Bank statements arrive by email, credit card notifications come via text-to-speech, and my father's accountant has been very thorough in tracking the family investment. The lawyer's eyebrows rose as she flipped through printed bank records, hotel receipts, and property documents. He's been financing a second life entirely. The Lekki apartment, the jewelry purchases, even a car registered under Chioma Nwokolo's name. She looked up. How did you get all this? When your husband treats you like furniture, he forgets furniture has ears. Adunny replied coolly. Password conversations, phone calls he thought I couldn't track, business meetings where he assumed I wasn't paying attention. She leaned forward. I've been building this case for 6 months. Barrister Ogundipe whistled low. This level of asset dissipation, the emotional abuse, the public humiliation. We can destroy him financially and socially. She paused. But are you prepared for the consequences? Emeka won't go quietly. Before Adunny could answer, her phone rang. Emeka's ringtone. A high-life melody that once made her heart flutter. Now it sounded like a funeral dirge. Adunny, where are you? His voice was strained. We need to talk. I'm handling some personal business, she replied calmly. Is everything all right? Your father called the office. He wants to review the investment terms. He mentioned something about irregularities. The panic was barely concealed. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Adunny's smile was radiant. Why would I know anything about business, my dear husband? I'm just your blind, useless wife. Remember, the line went dead. Barrister Ogundipe was grinning. I take it the financial pressure is beginning? Phase 1. Adunny confirmed. My father may be old-fashioned, but he doesn't tolerate disrespect to his daughter, especially not when his money is involved. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father's personal assistant. Chief Bakare has frozen the investment pending review. Mr. Okafor has been summoned to the house tomorrow at 10 a.m. The women exchanged looks of grim satisfaction. What's phase 2? The lawyer asked. Adunny's expression hardened. Chioma meets the real Mrs. Okafor. What do you think happens when the mistress meets the wife? Comment below if you think Adunny's revenge is justified. Don't forget to share this story with anyone who loves African marriage drama. The Radisson Blu Hotel in Victoria Island buzzed with the usual evening crowd of business executives and socialites. Adunny sat in the elegant lobby bar, her dark sunglasses concealing her sightless eyes, wearing a stunning emerald green traditional dress that hugged her curves perfectly. She'd positioned herself strategically near the entrance, her keen hearing tracking every footstep and conversation. At exactly 7 p.m., she heard them. Emeka's distinctive cologne mixing with a lighter, floral scent she'd detected on his shirts for months. Chioma's laughter tinkled like expensive crystal as they moved through the lobby, heading toward the restaurant where Emeka had booked what he thought was a private table. "Excuse me," Adunny called out softly as they passed. "Emeka? Is that you?" She heard his sharp intake of breath, felt his panic ripple through the air like heat waves off hot asphalt. "Adunny?" His voice cracked. What are you doing here?" She stood gracefully, her smile serene as she turned toward the source of his voice. "I'm meeting a friend for dinner." "What a lovely coincidence." She tilted her head slightly. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your companion?" The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Chioma, a petite, light-skinned woman in her mid-20s with perfectly straightened hair and designer everything, looked between Adunny and Emeka with growing confusion. This is Adunny," Emeka stammered. "My business partner's wife." Adunny's smile widened. "How interesting. I was under the impression I was your wife." She extended her hand toward Chioma. "Mrs. Emeka Okafor. And you must be the secretary I've heard so much about." Chioma's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she reluctantly took Adunny's. "Secretary? Oh yes," Adunny continued conversationally. "Emeka's told me all about his hard-working secretary who's been helping him through such difficult times. He said you've been very supportive." Her grip on Chioma's hand tightened almost imperceptibly, especially during his wife's recent challenges with blindness. The blood drained from Chioma's face. "Wife? But you said—" "I said what?" Emeka's voice was barely a whisper. "You said she was just a business arrangement." Chioma's voice rose, drawing stares from nearby patrons. "You said the marriage was over. You said—" She stopped abruptly, realizing the magnitude of the deception. Adunny released her hand and stepped back. "Well, this has been illuminating. Emeka, darling, we should discuss this recent development in your secretarial support." She turned to Chioma with devastating grace. "Miss, I hope you find the kind of man who deserves your loyalty. My husband clearly isn't that man." She walked away with dignified steps, leaving behind a tableau of destruction. Emeka stood frozen between his crumbling lies while Chioma's voice rose in accusation, drawing every eye in the lobby. "You told me she was practically dead to you. You said—" "Chioma, please, let me explain." But Adunny was already at the hotel entrance, where her driver waited. As she settled into the back seat of her father's Mercedes, she could still hear the shouting from inside. Her phone buzzed with a message from Barrister Ogendype. "Phase 3 ready when you are." What's Phase 3 of Adunny's revenge plan? Like this video if you're Team Adunny, and subscribe for more shocking African tales. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Bakare family compound in Ikeja, where Chief Adebayo Bakare held court in his study like the textile king. He'd become over 40 years of business. The room smelled of old leather, expensive cigars, and the kind of power that came from building an empire from nothing. Emeka sat across from the 70-year-old patriarch, sweating despite the air conditioning. 200 million naira, Chief Bakare said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent making men like Emeka quake. "That was my investment in your future, my daughter's security, and my grandchildren's inheritance." Emeka's architectural mind tried to calculate escape routes, but there were none. The old man's investigation had been thorough. Every questionable transaction, every diverted fund, every lie laid bare in manila folders spread across the mahogany desk. "Chief, I can explain." "Explain what?" The old man's eyes were steel. "How you used my money to buy jewelry for your girlfriend. How you rented an apartment with funds meant for my grandchildren's education. Or perhaps you'd like to explain why my daughter was publicly humiliated in Yaba Market." Emeka's mouth went dry. News traveled fast in Lagos, especially when it involved the daughter of Chief Bakare. "That was a misunderstanding, sir. Adunny and we've been under stress." "Stress?" Chief Bakare stood slowly, his traditional white agbada flowing around him like robes of judgment. "Let me tell you about stress, young man. Stress is watching your daughter lose her sight and still maintain more dignity than her husband. Stress is learning that the man you trusted with your legacy has been treating your child like garbage. The door opened, and Adunny entered with quiet grace, wearing a beautiful blue and gold ochre dress that made her look regal despite her disability. She moved to her father's side with practiced ease. "Papa, has Mr. Okafor explained the irregularities in the business accounts?" Her formal tone cut deeper than shouting would have. Emeka realized she was no longer speaking as his wife, but as an investor's daughter reviewing a failed business proposition. "He was about to," Chief Becaire replied grimly. He slid a document across the desk. "Your investment contract, Emeka. Read Clause 15. Emeka's hands shook as he found the section. The words blurred together, but the meaning was crystal clear. In the event of marital dissolution due to the investor's son-in-law's infidelity or abuse, all invested capital shall be immediately returned with 20% interest, or the investor may claim majority ownership of all business assets. You have 72 hours, Chief Becaire continued calmly, to return 240 million naira, or Becaire Industries becomes the majority owner of Okafor and Associates. He smiled coldly. Of course, we might consider alternative arrangements if you were willing to discuss a more equitable divorce settlement for my daughter. Emeka's phone rang. Chioma's number. He declined the call, but it rang again immediately. Answer it, Adunny said softly. I'm sure she has questions about your marital status. The phone rang a third time, then a fourth. Each ring sounded like a death knell for the life Emeka had built on lies. Sir, he began desperately, perhaps we can reach an understanding. The understanding, Chief Becaire interrupted, is that you have betrayed my family's trust. The only question now is whether you'll face the consequences with dignity or continue this pathetic performance. Adunny moved toward the door. Papa, I'll be in the garden with the children. They want to pick mangoes for lunch. She paused at the threshold. Emeka, when you're finished here, we need to discuss custody arrangements. My lawyer will be calling yours. As she left, Emeka realized the woman he'd underestimated had just checkmated him completely. What will Emeka do now that he's trapped? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments. Do you think he deserves what's coming to him? The law chambers of Barrister Ogundipe had been transformed into a war room. Documents covered every surface, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Across the polished conference table sat Emeka with his lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Barrister Adeyemi who clearly wished he was anywhere else. My client is prepared to offer joint custody, Barrister Adeyemi began weakly, with reasonable visitation rights and standard support payments. Barrister Ogundipe didn't even look up from her notes. Your client kicked his blind wife in public, used her family's investment to finance his affair, and lied about his marital status to his mistress. Standard arrangements don't apply to non-standard behavior. Emeka leaned forward desperately. Adunny, please, think about what this will do to Kemi and Chidi. They need their father. Adunny sat perfectly composed, her hands folded in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was calm as still water. The same father who kicked their mother in front of them? The same father who's been too busy with his secretary to attend Kemi's school plays or Chidi's football matches. She tilted her head slightly. Tell me, Emeka, when is Chidi's birthday? The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Emeka's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. November. No, December. It's in December, isn't it? January 15th, Adunny said quietly. He turned 8 last month. You missed it because you were in Abuja with Chioma. Barrister Ogundipe slid a document across the table. Mrs. Okafor is seeking full custody with supervised visitation for the father. She's also claiming 50% of all marital assets, including the business, plus child support of 1 million naira monthly per child. 2 million a month? Barrister Adeyemi sputtered. That's unreasonable. What's unreasonable? Adunny replied coolly. Is spending 3 million naira on jewelry for your girlfriend while your children wear shoes with holes in them. Emeka's phone buzzed insistently. Another call from Chioma. He'd been avoiding her for 3 days, but her messages were becoming increasingly frantic and increasingly public. She'd already posted cryptic messages on Instagram about fake men and their lies, and her friends were starting to ask questions. Furthermore, Barrister Ogundipe continued, there's the matter of emotional distress and public humiliation. My client is prepared to pursue both civil and criminal charges for domestic abuse. Criminal charges? Barrister Adeyemi looked panicked. Assault is assault, counselor. Nigeria's Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is quite clear on that point. Emeka's carefully constructed world was collapsing like a building with faulty foundations. His phone rang again, this time it was his business partner. I have to take this, he muttered, stepping into the hallway. Emeka, we have a problem, came the voice of Adebayo Coker, his longtime partner. Chief Becare's people are here with accountants. They're claiming majority ownership and demanding to review all our contracts. What the hell is going on? Through the glass door, Emeka could see Adunny speaking quietly with her lawyer. She looked serene, untouchable, like a queen pronouncing judgment on a failed kingdom. I'll call you back, he whispered into the phone. When he returned to the room, Barrister Ogundipe was sliding another document across the table. Or, she said with a slight smile, your client could accept Mrs. Okafor's generous settlement offer. Full custody to the mother, supervised visits twice monthly, complete return of the Becare family investment, 60% of remaining business assets, and a public apology for the domestic abuse incident. A public apology? Emeka's voice cracked. Published in 3 major newspapers, Adunny added softly. The same papers that will soon be covering the divorce proceedings anyway. This way you control the narrative. Emeka looked at his wife, really looked at her, for the first time in years. She was beautiful, dignified, and utterly ruthless. He'd created a monster by underestimating an angel. His phone rang again. Chioma. Then again. Then a text message. I know where you live. We need to talk. Now. The walls were closing in from every direction. What do you think Chioma's planning? Drop a like if you think Adunny's terms are fair, and comment below. Should Emeka take the deal or fight back? Hit subscribe for more intense African relationship drama. The gates of the Okafor family home on Victoria Island stood open like a mouth preparing to devour secrets. Emeka arrived to find Chioma's red Honda Civic parked aggressively across his driveway, music pounding from the speakers so loudly that neighbors had begun peering from their windows. The emotional manipulation he'd perfected over months was about to collide with his crumbling marriage in the most public way possible. Chioma stood on his front porch in a tight red dress and stilettos, her perfectly styled hair whipping in the evening breeze as she shouted into her phone. Yes, I'm at his house. The same house he claimed he was selling because his business partner's wife was giving them problems. Emeka's blood turned to ice water. Through the living room windows, he could see Adunny sitting calmly with Kemi and Chidi, helping them with homework. His children had no idea a hurricane was about to hit their world. Chioma, please, he began as he approached. Not here. Not in front of the children. She whirled on him like a fury unleashed. Children? You mean the children you told me didn't exist? Or are these different children from the ones who belong to your business partner's wife? The front door opened, and Adunny appeared with devastating composure. She'd changed into a stunning traditional wrapper and blouse that emphasized her elegant bearing, her head tied with a matching gelly that made her look like royalty. Good evening, she said pleasantly, as if greeting a neighbor. You must be Chioma. I've heard so much about you. Chioma's confidence faltered slightly in the face of Adunny's serene dignity. You're really his wife? For 8 more years than I should have been, yes. Adunny moved down the steps with practiced grace. But don't let that stop you from enjoying your relationship. After all, sharing is caring. The sarcasm was delivered with such gentle precision that it cut deeper than screaming would have. He told me you were divorcing. Chioma's voice rose to near hysteria. He said the marriage was just a business arrangement that was ending. Well, he was half right, Adunny replied coolly. It is ending. But it was never just business. She tilted her head toward Emeka. Tell her about the real business arrangements, darling. Tell her about my father's money. Tell her about the house she thought you were selling. Emeka stood frozen between two women who both had the power to destroy him in different ways. Chioma represented his desperate attempt to escape responsibility. Adunny represented the reckoning he'd been avoiding. The house, Adunny continued conversationally, is actually in my name. My father bought it as a wedding gift, along with the cars, the investment in Emeka's firm, and most of the furniture she's been enjoying. She smiled sweetly. Did he happen to mention that part? Chioma staggered backward as if slapped. You bought the apartment? My family's money bought everything, Adunny confirmed, including, it seems, your loyalty. Though I have to say, the market rate for mistresses has apparently gone up considerably. You bitch! Chioma lunged forward, but Adunny sidestepped with fluid grace, leaving Chioma stumbling in her heels. Careful, Adunny warned, her voice still pleasant. Assault charges are so messy, and I have excellent lawyers. Emeka's phone rang. Chief Bakare. He declined the call, but immediately received a text. 72 hours are now 48. Time is running out. Through the windows, he could see Kemi and Chitty watching the drama unfold. Their young faces confused and frightened. Everything he'd tried to protect them from was happening anyway, but worse, much worse than if he'd simply been honest from the beginning. Chioma, he began desperately. Let me explain. Explain what? Her voice cracked with hurt and rage. That you made me the other woman in my own relationship? That every gift, every promise, every I love you was bought with another woman's money. Adunny moved toward the door. I'll leave you two to sort this out. The children need their dinner. She paused. Oh, and Emeka? Tomorrow is decision day with my father. I do hope you've figured out where you're going to find 240 million naira. As she disappeared into the house, Emeka realized he was completely alone, trapped between a furious mistress and an unforgiving wife. With 48 hours to find money, he didn't have or lose everything he'd worked for. Chioma's next words chilled him to the bone. If I'm going down, you're coming with me. What's Chioma planning now? Hit that like button if you think both women should dump Emeka. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking twists in this African revenge tale. The morning headlines of the Punch newspaper would forever change how Lagos society viewed domestic betrayal. Under the bold heading, Architect's Wife Speaks Out. He kicked me because I'm blind. Adunny's story spread across the front page with devastating detail. But this wasn't the controlled narrative Emeka had been offered in the lawyer's office. This was Chioma's revenge, and it was nuclear. Emeka stared at his phone screen in horror as social media exploded. The Instagram post from Chioma's account showed screenshots of their WhatsApp conversations, bank transfers, even photos of jewelry he'd bought her, all captioned with a damning confession. I was the mistress and I didn't know. This man destroyed two women with his lies. Lagos ladies, beware of Emeka Okafor. His phone rang constantly. Business partners, clients, his mother, reporters. Each call brought fresh humiliation as the story spread like wildfire through WhatsApp groups, Facebook shares, and Twitter threads. The hashtag Justice for Adunny was already trending. At his office, or what used to be his office, Emeka found Chief Bakare's accountants boxing up files while his business partner Adebayo paced like a caged animal. 48 hours, and this is how you handle it? Adebayo exploded. The whole city knows our business now. Clients are canceling contracts left and right. I didn't authorize any of this, Emeka protested weakly. You didn't authorize cheating on your wife either. But here we are. Adebayo threw a tablet at him, showing their company's reviews plummeting in real time. The Marriott project, the government contract, the shopping mall, all suspended pending ethical review. We're finished. Emeka's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. This is just the beginning. You destroyed my life, so I'm destroying yours. See, the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Chioma wasn't just hurt. She was systematic. The woman he'd underestimated as arm candy had been documenting everything, building her own case for revenge. Now she was methodically destroying his reputation while Adunny dismantled his finances. Sir. His secretary's voice was nervous. There are reporters downstairs. They want a statement about the abuse allegations. Through his office window, Emeka could see news vans lining the street. His life was becoming a public spectacle, the kind of cautionary tale that would be whispered about in boardrooms and social clubs for years to come. His phone rang. "Adunny, I see you've made the news." Her voice was calm, almost sympathetic, though not quite the way you planned. "This wasn't me," he said desperately. "Chioma's gone mad. She's posting everything online, telling everyone the truth." Adunny interrupted gently. "Yes, it's uncomfortable when secrets become public knowledge, but perhaps you should have considered that before you created the secrets. Adunny, please, we can still work this out privately. Call off the lawyers. Ask your father to reconsider." "Oh, Emeka." Her laugh was soft, almost fond. "You still don't understand. This stopped being about us the moment you decided I was disposable. Now it's about consequences. What do you want from me?" "I want you to remember this feeling," she replied quietly. "The helplessness, the public shame, the sense that your whole world is crumbling while everyone watches. That's how you made me feel for 3 years. The only difference is that you chose this." The line went dead. Emeka stared at his phone, then at the chaos of his office, then at the reporters gathering like vultures in the street below. His architectural mind tried to design a way out, but every blueprint led to the same conclusion: total collapse. His secretary appeared in the doorway again. "Sir, your wife's lawyer is here. She says it's urgent." Barrister Ogundipe entered with the bearing of a general accepting surrender. "Mr. Okafor, I have new documents for your consideration. Given recent developments, my client is prepared to modify her previous offer." The folder she placed on his desk felt heavy as a tombstone. "Can Emeka recover from this public humiliation? What's in those new documents? Like this video if you think he's getting what he deserves. And subscribe for the explosive conclusion to this tale of infidelity and revenge." The modified settlement terms read like a death sentence written in legal language. As Emeka studied the documents in his ransacked office, each clause felt like another nail in the coffin of his former life. The public disgrace had shifted the power balance completely. Adunny was no longer just demanding justice, she was dictating terms from a position of total victory. "Complete asset forfeiture," Barrister Ogundipe explained with professional detachment. "The house, cars, business shares, even your personal accounts. Everything purchased with or enhanced by Becker family funds reverts to Mrs. Okafor. You'll retain only premarital assets and whatever income you can generate independently." Emeka's hands shook as he read the custody arrangements. "Supervised visitation only? For 2 hours every other Sunday. Your public image is now that of an abusive husband," the lawyer replied coolly. "The family court will view any unsupervised contact as potentially dangerous to the children's welfare. You're fortunate Mrs. Okafor isn't seeking complete termination of parental rights." The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who'd once dismissed his wife as helpless now found himself at the mercy of her strategic brilliance. While he'd been playing house with Chioma, Adunny had been building an empire of evidence and alliances that stretched from family court to the court of public opinion. His phone buzzed with another social media notification. The story had gone beyond Lagos. Blogs in Abuja, Port Harcourt, even international African diaspora websites were picking up the narrative. Nigerian architect's domestic abuse exposed by courageous blind wife was trending across 3 countries. "There's one more thing," Barrister Ogundipe continued, sliding a final document across the desk. "Mrs. Okafor is prepared to offer you a choice. Sign these papers accepting full responsibility for the marriage's failure, including a public apology for domestic abuse, and she'll recommend the reduced settlement terms to her father." Refuse. She didn't need to finish. Emeka understood perfectly. Refuse and Chief Becker would pursue criminal charges, seize the business completely, and leave him with nothing but legal bills and a destroyed reputation. "What about Chioma's revelations?" he asked weakly. "What about them?" "She's exercising her right to share her truth. Rather effectively, I might add." The lawyer's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Your private business is now public knowledge. The question is whether you'll face the consequences with dignity or continue this pathetic denial. Through his office window, Emeka could see the protest that had formed outside his building. Women's rights activists, domestic violence survivors, even some of his former clients holding signs demanding justice. The co-parenting conflicts he'd thought he could manage quietly had become a symbol of something much larger. His phone rang. His mother. Emeka. What is this nonsense I'm seeing on Facebook? Her voice carried 40 years of disappointment and 5 decades of Lagos society expectations. Chief Bakir's daughter? That beautiful, well-mannered girl? You did what to her? The shame burned worse than any physical pain. His mother had loved Adunny like the daughter she'd never had praised her grace and intelligence even after the accident. Now her voice carried the kind of disgust usually reserved for strangers. Mama, it's complicated. Complicated. The word exploded through the phone. You kicked a blind woman in public. There is nothing complicated about that. Have I raised an animal? Barrister Ogundipe checked her watch pointedly. Mr. Okafor, I need an answer. Mrs. Okafor has other matters to attend to. Emeka thought about his children, about Kemi's trusting smile and Chidi's hero worship. He thought about the business he'd built, the respect he'd commanded, the future he'd imagined. All of it was ashes now, scattered by his own foolishness and fanned into flames by 2 women who'd refused to accept his version of reality. If I sign this, he said quietly, what happens to me? You get to start over, the lawyer replied, with nothing but your skills and whatever dignity you can salvage. It's more than many men in your position deserve. Outside, the protesters' chants grew louder. Justice for Adunny. No more silence. Emeka picked up the pen, his architect's hands steady despite everything. As he signed his name to documents that would strip away his carefully constructed life, he realized that Adunny's revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about transformation. She was rebuilding herself from the ashes of their marriage while he learned what it truly meant to lose everything. The last signature felt like stepping off a cliff into an unknown future. What will happen to Emeka now that he's lost everything? Don't miss the final chapter to see how Adunny's revenge story concludes. Hit subscribe and that notification bell for more gripping African tales. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Adunny stood in the boardroom of what was now Bakir Okafor Enterprises, her fingers tracing the raised letters of her new business cards. The company that Emeka had built with her father's money was thriving under her leadership, with her keen mind for detail and inherited business acumen proving far more valuable than anyone had imagined. The Marriott contract has been restored, announced Adebayo Coker, who'd stayed on as managing partner after Emeka's departure. They specifically requested to work with the new leadership team. Your reputation for integrity has completely rehabilitated the company's image. Adunny smiled as she listened to the quarterly reports. The domestic betrayal that had nearly destroyed her had instead become the foundation of her independence. The settlement had given her controlling interest in the architectural firm, full custody of her children, and something far more valuable, the respect of an entire city that had watched her transform pain into power. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kemi's teacher. Your daughter's essay about my hero made the whole class cry. She wrote about how her mother taught her that being different makes you strong, not weak. The children had adapted better than anyone expected. Chidi was excelling in his new school, no longer carrying the weight of his father's disappointment, while Kemi had blossomed with confidence, her natural empathy deepened by watching her mother's grace under pressure. Ma'am, her new secretary announced, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. Adunny's enhanced senses immediately recognized the nervous energy, the familiar cologne mixed with desperation. Emeka stepped into her office like a ghost of her former life, his once proud bearing replaced by the hunched shoulders of a man who'd learned humility the hard way. Hello, Adunny. She remained seated behind her desk, a power position that felt natural now. Emeka, I understand you're working for a small firm in Ikeja now. Yes. His voice was barely a whisper. Listen, I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. Not the legal document, not the public statement, but He struggled with words that should have come years ago. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I made you invisible in your own marriage. Adunny tilted her head slightly, studying him with senses that had grown sharper in his absence. What do you want, Emeka? I want to see my children more than 2 hours every other Sunday. I want to be a real father to them. His voice cracked slightly. Chioma left Lagos. She said she couldn't stand living in the same city where everyone knew the story. I lost everything, Adunny. Everything except the chance to be better for Kemi and Chidi. The irony was complete. The man who'd once held all the power was now begging for scraps of access to the life he'd thrown away. But something in his tone suggested this wasn't manipulation. It was genuine remorse. The children ask about you, she admitted. Chidi especially misses the man he thought you were. I want to be that man. The man I should have been all along. Adunny was quiet for a long moment, her mind calculating possibilities and risks. The revenge she'd orchestrated had been about justice, but perhaps justice could include redemption. Not for their marriage, which was dead and buried, but for their children's future. Supervised visits can become unsupervised, she said finally, but only if you prove you've actually changed. Therapy, anger management, and most importantly, honest communication with Kemi and Chidi about why our marriage ended. Hope flickered in his eyes. You would consider that? I would consider what's best for my children, she corrected. They deserve a father who sees them, really sees them, the way you never saw me. As Emeka left her office with tentative arrangements for family counseling, Adunny reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The woman who'd once been kicked in a market for being useless was now running a multimillion naira business, raising confident children, and had become a symbol of resilience for women across Nigeria. Her phone rang, a new client, a major hotel chain wanting to discuss expansion plans. As she answered with confident professionalism, Adunny realized that Emeka's greatest mistake hadn't been the cheating or the abuse. It had been underestimating the strength that comes from having nothing left to lose. The blind woman he'd tried to make invisible had finally learned to see herself clearly. And that vision was more powerful than any revenge she could have imagined. Outside her window, Lagos sprawled in all its chaotic beauty, a city of survivors where strength was forged in the fires of adversity. Adunny had become part of that legacy, not as a victim of domestic betrayal, but as an architect of her own redemption. Her story would be told in markets and boardrooms, in women's groups and family gatherings, wherever someone needed to remember that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift of all. The woman who'd been kicked for being blind had opened everyone's eyes to what real power looked like. The end. What did you think of Adunny's incredible journey from victim to victor? This story shows that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about rebuilding yourself stronger than ever before. Drop a like if Adunny inspired you, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful African tales that celebrate the strength of women who refuse to stay down. Comment below, what would you have done in Adunny's situation? We love reading your thoughts and featuring them in future videos. Until next time, remember, being underestimated might just be your greatest advantage.